Hello, I am Chris from Airwindows, and we're doing another coding stream. So let me get my ducks in a row here, and we'll get on with it. I'm thinking I might need to get a napkin to blow my nose. We'll see. May or may not be necessary. But yeah, what we are doing today is more ports to VST, because this is some stuff that needs to be done, and I am here to do it. Let's get started. Making sure everything's working. I spent a little time this morning setting up some synthesizer stuff. I am looking to kind of rethink and expand my modular thing out a little bit, and I haven't entirely sorted out what I'm doing with it, but with a bit of luck, it can become suitably nifty. I've got some ideas for where I'd like to take that stuff, and it's just a question of how reasonable it is to move on it. For now, we're going to do some coding. And the other day, I did Edge VST, and that worked out pretty good. Hey, Melyoung777. So we might be able to burn through the rest of these. Although I'm also having a look at cabs here, because it seems like when I have Edge and Dirt, no, nothing yet. Nothing of what? I believe I'm streaming, and Mike Aux is making audio go, but no matter. Let me see about getting some of this going. I think what I'm going to want to do is fire up Dirt. And you know what we're going to do? Let's port it over from Edge first and then see what changes need to be made. That being another thing that we can do to get this kind of thing going. As you can see, I'm totes covering everything up. But that is hopefully fine. When I'm doing music stuff, you see more in the way of the cameras, but I'd like to be showing the screen capture to the extent that I can anyhow. I bet you anything. Yep, Dirt's ID was in fact literally Dirt. So this is a way of getting like prototyping going for something. I know that these are similar plugins. So what I'm going to do is make them be identical, and Dirt is going to be a clone of Edge and hopefully work. At which point I'll look up the Dirt code of the AU and see what I have in the way of that that's different, because I think a fair bit of it is going to be very similar. So here's where we start. This actually appears to be the AU that I'm looking at. So let's re-examine that. No, it's not. It's the H file. There we go. So the bit I'm missing is I need to have this stuff where this is. You can see it goes in here. So we'll get a little start. When I save that, things will turn blue, meaning that the compiler knows what it is. And that would appear to be everything I need in Dart.h. In fact, that might already be correct for that. I might not need anything else. CPP file is gonna need to be a little different. But again, same deal. Since these are similar, I should be able to make it be exactly the same and then work out what variations I'm going to need to do. If that is very quick and convenient, I'll have time to do the VST versions of the stereo chorus and the stereo doubler. I'm not expecting any impulse responses magic today. These are not that, and neither are the stereo plugins. I'm looking to get some of this VST stuff because I still have a bunch of legwork to do. Twitch is not working? That's weird. Why would that be? Wonder if I can have a look at that. Give me a second. Better check that. I also have a restream dashboard that'll probably tell me what I need to know. No, it looks as if it's it does appear to be streaming, so that's odd. Let me have a look at the restream dashboard and see if it can tell me anything. No, it claims that they are both live, so yeah. And hello everybody. And I'm going to quit out of Chromium. You thought we were doing cabs today? Well, I've got these things to do. I may very well have time for cabs. Like, I'll be going for about an hour and a half, I think. Kind of like the duration of the music streams have been going. And I'll see where it gets me. Maybe we can. We'll see. I think I commented on it was very cumbersome. So I might be able to do the AU version of it, even though it is very cumbersome. You might hear a little background noise. That's my laundry. So this is going to be all the same, but this I might want to have updated. Boop. And then lastly, if I get edge pros over, oh, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, the downer here is that I don't feel I have a good way. I might have a way, but it's not a good way to plug in a guitar here. I've got an output and I've got a line input. Maybe that's worth fooling with. Give me a second, folks. I'm going to go and get a cable. Alrighty, so I have a cable, and this is a guitar to 1/8 inch. In theory, I may be able to plug this in to the laptop and do a really garbage version of running a guitar directly in and then using the plugins to do a guitar amp sound. And the way I've got it set up, you would actually be able to hear it. I just don't know if that's going to work. But I've got that cable, so we might be able to try it. Let me at least get the thing I'm in the middle of doing done. Once I've got that, we'll see what else we can make happen. So Dirt Prog has nothing in it, and Edge Prog has everything in it. I need to make them be the same. So we'll have a look, and clearly we can use this overall scale thing and do this. And that'll give us all of our filters. Excuse me. And then likewise, for the double precision one, this is the one, and I've run across somebody who was compiling things like on Gearspace today, who was like, yeah, we're not getting anything like the amount of improvement that you're looking for, and I'll have to try that and see. I feel like there is going to be a wide disparity between performance on folks who are getting a huge benefit out of going to double from long double and folks who are seeing next to no benefit. It's going to depend upon the systems they're running and the particular plugins involved. And it might even have a tangible effect on people who are doing things like running Ableton Live in Rosetta on M1 Macs, which has been a catastrophic problem for some of the plugins. Some of that might be because they're trying to run long doubles. I don't know, but we'll find out. It's worth trying to find out. And now that we've got that sorted, excuse me. We, I guess, just grab this and copy it over directly, huh? Right down to begin 32-bit floating point dither. And then the double replacing is going to be exactly the same, and right down to the 64-bit floating point dither, except for I'm going to be updating that as follows. Since we're using the random numbers, we don't delete everything. We leave the random numbers updating. This is a very primitive random number generator, but it's good enough for audio. It's not going to be like cryptographically random, but sometimes we need to run lots of randomness and not have it be incredibly costly. So we're going to do the same thing here, which is comment out stuff that we are not using. And that should have got us an end result. Let's build it. It says it succeeded. And here's our VSTs. Let's open up something like our drums. And VST Edge. since we already knew that worked, time to have a look at VST effects under D for dirt. There we go. This should work and make a sound. And we can do many of the things that we do with like density and drive, like do a little dry-wet blending of it so that we're just enhancing the highs of it. So we've established that works. Good enough for now. Time to go in again, and this time we open up a different file. We're going to open up the AU version of Dirt, which is going to be slightly different. And now our job is to run the differences, figure out what's different, because that will accelerate our ability to develop all of this. I doubt there's going to be any differences here. Same number of parameters. Yeah, nothing going to be there unless there's extra variables I'm not taking into account. So let's have a look. Nope. We got the IIR sample. We have nothing else of consequence here. We've got FPD. Maybe Robinson can go and piss off, spammer. Yeah, small but high-end DAC or earphone amp, any recommendation? You know, Apogee shouldn't be too bad. As far as what professionals use, you're probably going to get more mileage out of getting better headphones than getting like some kind of special headphone amp or preamplifier. Like Apogee ought to work reasonably well for you. It's like I'm going to be doing stuff on a Motu portable one, and I know that the converters in those are pretty decent, and I'm expecting the headphone amp is decent. And what I use for if I wanted to do more high-end DAC and headphone amplification is my Lavry. So if you wanted something better than an Apogee, only thing that really comes to mind, and it would be somewhat more cumbersome, it's going to be more difficult to go on the road with piles of extra stuff, is like pick up a Lavry DA10. It does definitely have a better headphone amplifier than, you know, the Motu, probably the Apogee one. That's still basically kind of well, I'm really not, I'm not sure whether I'd go that far. I just know that the Lavry DA10 performs really well. And that's not the most recent Lavry or the most expensive Lavry you could get. It's just something that you could probably get your hands on. It's going to be priced, and availability is going to be much like any high-end DAC, but it is a high-end DAC that contains its own headphone amp. And I think both of those are entirely up to the challenge. That would be my only suggestion, because I don't think there's not that far to go with this. Like if you were working with an Apogee and its little headphone amps and stuff there, that's probably getting you most of the way there. That's not going to be a big needing to do a lot of stuff to bring it up to par. Apogee is probably pretty close to par. And going beyond would be either going to something like the Lavry, which again, better conversion, better DAC, better headphone amp, probably more powerful headphone amp. The Lavry's really very powerful indeed. Or doing something like Burl. And the trouble with Burl is you'd be wanting to use something like that, like a brand name like that, more for ADC than a DAC, because that kind of thing, or some kinds of high-end DACs, are a lot more about making euphonic, artificially wonderful sounding sounds. Like you could be running a DAC that's like all the tubes and the transformers and so on, and that's going to make everything sound rather luscious and whatever, but it'll lie to you if you're trying to work on it. If you're trying to work on it, you're probably going to want something that is more accurate, like the Lavry or indeed the Apogee. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. You're probably fairly well in the zone. I'm pretty sure that an Apogee 1, the main limitation of that, because I've owned one, is that you have one input. That's it. And that can be frustrating. I wanted a lot more. I got it by mistake. I thought like, oh, hey, I can bring in stereo. Nope, you get one input. Am I studying computers since back days? Kinda. This is a antique Mac laptop. I developed my plugins on an antique machine so that they're backward compatible. And I've been doing that for some time. If I was to change that, it would be because I was bringing out a newer kind of plugin with stuff like GUI and so on, where it really depended upon modern frameworks, and everything would be different there. But this is my workflow for the broadest possible backward compatibility. And while I'm at that, let me this and Audio-Technica M50X. Well, I have some Grado earbuds, and those are what I've settled on. I'm actually hoping to get in the mail from some garbage Amazon seller a tiny little zip-up case that I can put the earbuds in. Because, like, this is the earbuds. These are the Grados. I've got red magic marker on one of them so that I can see what's left and right more easily. These are fairly fancy little Grado earbuds. But they don't look all that fancy, but they have the sound. And this is the adapter for plugging it into the Lavry or indeed the Motu, which has a full-size headphone output. And I need to be able to pack these into a small case so that I can bring them around without having them tangled or have the cable ripped or something. So let's see. So this is the AU. And I shouldn't need to be concerned with that. Should be this. Let me double check. Let me make sure that that is in fact the same, because this is where I would look. The H file compared to the CPP file on the VST. And that does look as if it's exactly the same, and I believe the control layout is the same. So we're good so far with that. So what I'm going to be looking at, this is from Edge, and I'm not going to need to change anything in here, but the CPP file, this is how it's going to be different. Jazz, as far as earbuds damaging your eardrums, don't listen so loud. The whole thing about headphones is you can't turn them up too much. You got to keep it at a chill volume. They won't necessarily damage your eardrums. They just have more capacity to produce high sound pressure levels at a given voltage because they're tinier and they're closer to your eardrum. You know, you got to be careful with that kind of stuff. I don't tend to have headphones be loud like Pete Townsend, famous boomer grade rock guitar player. Serious hearing loss, tinnitus, all that kind of stuff. He doesn't blame the high watt amplifiers he used, and those are loud. He blames headphones in the studio. And so there are certain things that you need to do if you're working with headphones in the studio. And if you're able to use, like, you know, classy audiophile headphones or whatever, then you probably already have the power to turn them down. if you're doing something like overdubbing drums onto a recording, that makes it more difficult, and that is when you have to start getting like extreme isolation headphones, the kind of headphones where they put like Sony 7506 drivers into essentially gun range ear isolation headphones. These things with heavy like gel earpieces that are really hard and pressing on your head a lot, and rigid plastic enclosures. And that is what you need to track loud things in headphones without hurting yourself. It's very important. Oh, well, I mean, yeah, if you're going to listen to Skrillex, and I assume what you mean is you're turning it way up as well. Like, I feel ya, I get it, but you should be doing that over speakers and not over headphones. And that would be the problem very much is with you, and you need to stop. Stop that. Meanwhile, let's get back into this. Dirt proc is what needs to change in order to be in line with what the real program is doing. And it's not going to be in reset because that's going to be the same both ways, but it's going to be in here somewhere. So let's find out. Here's where we start seeing a difference, and I believe I can step this in a little bit. In trim, Dirt has a different calculation on in trim. So let's copy that over and use it instead, and then translate it to the VST form. So instead of get parameter param1, we're just going with 8. And we'll skip down and do the same thing on the double replacing. And making the files resemble each other as much as possible while doing this. Because the way this is working, it's going to have a certain amount of gain always. I kind of started these plugins from scratch. They're coded in pretty much directly in C. And they're based off of templates that I have on my GitHub profile. And the templates are audio unit or VST plugin. They're designed to be basically a simple gain plugin. And then I change the DSP code as I go. So let us skip back up here and see whether cutoff is going to be any different. 25K. Note that the get sample rate is spelled differently. Capitalization is different between the AU and the VST. Limits on cutoff are the same. IIR amount is also the same, which kind of follows. They're meant to be kind of similar plugins in that if you're preferring a particular setting in the one and you switch to the other, you should be able to use the same settings and get roughly the same effect. That's the idea. So it looks very much as if that was the only part that changed. The gain trim changed. And I'll show you what that means once we actually have this working. This stuff did not change, which means that this stuff does not change either. But once we get into here, it's all going to start looking different, but only in certain places. So let's investigate. I will put these in, I was going to say side to side, but I'm going to put them up and down so that we can look at both of them on the same screen. I'll cover up chat a little bit for a moment. I am in fact using Yamaha NS10, so I'm not sure if it, no, it is NS10M. They're slightly modified. These NS10s have a little extra damping inside them rather than being like stuffed with fiberglass or something. They have plastic bubble wrap inside them. I found that that is a more interesting and useful way to cut down resonances inside enclosures. It's like a limp mass, and it translates vibrations into frictional energy in a more interesting way. I found that that works better for me than just stuffing stuff with fiberglass, and allows for more of a internal airspace while still having damping. And I've also got, what's that stuff? The name brand car silencing stuff, where you put that on the inside panels of your car and it stops the metal from ringing. It's sort of tar with a heavy aluminum backing, and I've got that stuff also on the inside of the Yamahas, so their panels are damped down quite a lot. And I'm sold on the Yamaha NS10 thing because it's not that they are flat, as it is the waterfall plot behaves really well, and that's why they perform the way they do. You can have a much flatter speaker with crossovers that are a lot worse, and drivers that ring or panels that vibrate a lot longer. The reason NS10s tell you the truth is a variety of things. One of them is their infinite baffle. So you are not going to get the low frequency blur of a port adding extraneous information to fill out the frequency response and make them flat, but in a way that lies. Instead, since they're infinite baffle, everything that you get bass-wise out of them, which ain't much, is in phase, coherent, and accurate. And I'm using subs to boost them. I'm using my 4 12-inch woofer subs that I made for that purpose. Anyways, let's get back into this. So here's our first part of the audio. And we'll go up to the top here and then go down until we get past these filter defining things. And here is our audio for the VST plugin. So this stuff is matching so far. And we have apparently not updated the AU of Dirt to cut off at the same point, where IIR sample needs to gate a little quicker than that to keep things clean. Oh, and since I haven't built this in a while, it needs to build twice. That's a quirk of the AUs, is these AUs on this version, you have to build it twice in order to have the stuff that it draws upon to do the actual compile. And that's kind of ridiculous, but there it is. It's just a thing. And so here we have our IIR sample, and this is the IIR sample in stereo, so there's 2 of them. Dirt has a, well, Edge, which this is, has an immediate clip, which Dirt does not. So we're going to, first of all, let me make sure that I have these correct. Oh no, hang on. No, this is the AU. So in the AU, the way this is calibrated, I need to have a clip factor, and I can copy that over from here and paste it on top of the other thing. Here, I'll show you what I mean. So what makes this match the AU version of Dirt is we're putting a hard clip in right in the beginning, but it's not dependent upon the gain. The gain's not going to make this clip. And as a result, this has now become the same, and we have our out sample, and we have a stereo out sample here. Now, we've got a different bit of code which is going to repeat itself over and over and over again for the distortion. So that's what we're looking at here. And this is what we're looking at here. So here's dirt. We have a hard clip right at the front, but then everything else, we're doing a biquad filter, and that will have some effects actually, but everything else is dependent upon the input being hard clipped to 1 or -1. And then we've got this repeated instead of the what Edge has. And this is the guts of the most simple version of Tube, Airwindows Tube. So the next thing that we have to do here is, excuse me, actually slow down. No, I might as well do this in 32-bit and then copy everything over. I shouldn't bounce back and forth between them. I'll only confuse myself. So see what we've got here? We've got the hard clip, we've got the original filter, and this is what we had for clipping, but instead we want this. So I'll be replacing everything that I see looking like this with what I've got here. And it's doing the soft clip and then multiplying by intrim on the end, which is about the same really. It's no great difference, but I need to change it to say left and right. And again, this is that Airwindows Tube algorithm in its simplest form, which is the softest of soft clips I can get out of that particular algorithm. And the reason I'm having it in that simplest, softest form is partly because we have to do so many instances of it, so I don't want it to be too complicated. And having done that, we're now going to glance over this and make sure that everything says L and R correctly, which it does. And then every time I see this, it gets replaced. Which is quite a few times, because this is a 7-stage distortion. But we might be able to test it out in an amusing way, but I should check, because we are repeating this, but did I actually have that on the very end? So this is interesting. Instead of having that on the very end, I have this. Let us see whether that's going to work, because I won't be wanting that there. Instead, we want 2 of these since it's going to be stereo, and I'm probably going to want to, I'm probably going to want to have a look at the VST Edge to see if that also has this, because I believe they're both supposed to have dry wet. And I'm pretty sure that they do, but I just want to make sure, because what I just copied in there seems to be missing important pieces. So I'll be looking back on that and checking it out. But also, let's take all of this and let's see, here's our denormalization. I'm going to want to put that underneath the denormalization. Yeah, it looks like that's right. I think I just deleted it by mistake. That's what I did. And pasting that in means that now these are both designed to be dirt rather than edge. And I can build it nice and quickly like that. We don't need to get back into the And then if that worked, we can option drag and drop that there and put it into the VSTs. And as I said, I'm going to want to have a look at whether that's correct, because I was trying to copy this from Edge, so it does need to have Edge done properly. Let's find out. I bet it is. I bet it just was goozling myself a little bit. I stopped using Buyer. I still have the Buyer. I'll show you the Buyer. This is indeed the Buyer. It's just I'm not necessarily using it for doing videos. I'm using a condenser mic for doing the videos. If I get up for recording, like drums and guitars and things, and do a song, I'm almost certainly going to be singing into this mic and not the condenser, because this is just more flattering. My voice needs all the help it can get as far as actually singing something. And if I do this and do something with, say, harmonies or whatever, it's going to make it a lot more flattering. And I'm just less worried about that for doing plugin making videos and stuff like that, or presenting them on YouTube. So there's that. But that was important, and I have hopes of doing a plugin where I'll take the lavalier mic, for instance, and see if I can come up with ways to have the lavalier mic sound a little bit more like the Buyer. Because that's a ribbon mic, so it has some very striking differences as far as how it behaves, and they're not necessarily limited only to frequency response measurements. The way that it hits the transformer, there's going to be a lot of things in there. And it's much like how an SM57 has a tiny little transformer in it, and overdriving the core of that transformer gives it some of its sound. It's going to be like that. So I'm very interested in seeing whether I can do a sort of Buyerification of a cheaper Electret, lavalier style mic. Because if I can make that happen, anybody's condenser mic, as long as it's reasonably flat, can be leaned in the direction of the more euphonic sounding mic. We'll see. I'll be very interested in whether it's asymmetrical, is it giving me a lot of second harmonics, so on and so forth. I'm going to be measuring that quite a bit. But yeah, I'm always happy to see two models in Python. It's a question of, let other people see it as well. I'm not the only person coding things. You might wind up with other people in chat who also want to code stuff. And let me see, I wanted to look this over and make sure that at the end of these, I do have the wet dry. So that seems good. And then likewise for Mac VST, here is our Dirt plugin. And that also needs to have a wet dry, which it does in the 64-bit, and it does in the 32. So I believe those are going to match, because they need to. If you have the 32 and 64-bit builds not being exactly the same, you wind up with weird bugs that people can't reproduce. And having copied that over, oh God, excuse me. Let's fire up, I don't know, have we got a preferences? I've been using those drum loops. I'll go back into that. ESS chipped? I'm not sure what that means. So we were just listening to Edge. Edge can be very bright. has a lot of gain. Now, by contrast, dirt that's not as much gain. It's quite a lot less high gain than edge. And it's also softer clipping. And we have a certain amount of being able to dial in the tone of this. These are distortions. So we have a certain amount of kind of resonant-like filter on there. But this is just a lot tubier and warmer. And again, this is full gain. And it's using the ultrasonic filtering to let you do very sharp clipping that is not hitting you with too much aliasing. Oh yeah, Sabre 32. I think that the Motus are also using that. I think they are using that. And then just to make sure, we're going to have a look at dirt off of VST. Certainly seems to be acting like it's the same algorithm. So then the next question becomes, can we put a guitar in here? Because we might as well, especially if we start fooling with cabs and trying to make that be a thing. That might be kind of important. So first things first, let's go and grab a guitar and this patch cord. We're not going to need this window open. You can actually see a little bit more now. Mostly it's about the code. I don't know if I'm going to be able to patch through a live system unless I just fire up an old version of Logic or something. But let's start by grabbing the Strat style. Like so. Muckily? I'm not sure if I've ever heard of Muckily. If this can be used for mixing, if it can be a big step improved to Apogee 1. I don't know if the Sabre 32 is that much of a jump over Apogee 1, honestly. I couldn't tell you. So we're not hearing anything yet. Let's see about devices. Built-in input should be acceptable. Oh, and play through might help. And let's see. Well, I'm not getting much out of that. Should I be? I've got a very low signal input here. I might be able to fix that though. Let's find out. Here's the thing. Audio MIDI setup. So built-in input, line in. I do have the volume turned down apparently. So let's see whether I can boost it like mad and see whether that'll help any. It might. We'll find out. We'll start recording. So here's the thing. I don't think I can play this live through anything, but now I've got a little guitar recording. And in fact, I can probably add on to that with another guitar recording and then save it and be able to work with that. So let's see what we can do. And what I'm thinking of is that was a Strat, but I also have this little puppy. It's a cheesy guitar body, but this guitar neck is the one that I grew up playing. I carved it that way myself as a child. It's got 3 on a side tuners arranged in a peculiar way and a funny neck profile because I made the neck profile be more V-shaped, again, as a child. And I can no longer adjust the truss rod. And I've got it with a DiMarzio Breed pickup, and that's a much more high gain pickup. So I'm going to plug it in exactly the same and continue. And it's enough silliness there. This is the one with the Lamy bar. And so now I can unplug this. My trouble with these is going to be that's a line input. That's not impedance matched correctly for a guitar. So one thing that might help is having a kind of input thing. Like one thing I can possibly do is come up with ways of having a little stomp box-like thing that lets you do this. Line into API is high impedance, but this is not line into API. This is line in directly into line in directly into the laptop. Very different. So what we've got is 2 separate recordings now, combined into one. And it's probably a fine time for me to save that as something, because I can save it in sounds as So first it's Strat pickups. They are Lindy Frolin, they're low impedance. And then DiMarzio, which is Breed, which is very high impedance. And next thing we do is start putting together an effect stack. And then we get to play with some of these other things like edge and dirt. Excuse me. And we'll turn them on and off as we see fit. And then lastly, cabs. Excuse me. So the idea here is to be able to get a DI guitar to sound like it's a guitar amplifier. And the hi-hat is going to have a significant effect. So here we are trying to make a guitar sound. Also note So we've already got several approaches here. Have we got any requests? No, there's no guitar input impedance matching plugin because you can't put back what you lost. If the impedance is not giving you clarity on the top end, because that's what impedance matching does. So gain, dirt is going to give you your cleaner sounds. In fact, I can skip through this if it lets me. I just have to move these out of the way, that's all. So dirt is going to be more suited to your Stratty type sounds, which will loop over here. And let's call it a large combo. And so this is what you get off of dirt with the cab setting of large combo. And if we want to have it be more sparkly, there are some things we can do. Like our low pass in the so doing this, leaving all the fizz, and using the high pass cutoff quite high. If you're looking for like a Fender Twin kind of sound, you might not want all that much gain. But you'd probably want dirt because it's lower gain than edge. Probably. And you'll be voicing it where, rather than cutting off a lot of the highs, you're opening it up a lot, but maybe not all the way. Like you'll have a boost around, higher than 10K. But if you're having the boost that much higher, we can kind of dial in the shimmer there. And cabs with large combo is giving me some of that shimmer. I'm pretty sure that's meant to be a Fender Twin styly thing. Alternately, if we wanted to do like a smaller amp, we could try small combo. Again, this is dry, so this is basically just layering a convolution impulse. This happens to be the ones I used. And for your small combo that's not a Fender Twin, you might want to low pass it a little bit. And we'll get into a sort of Fender Champ kind of thing going on. We're getting that sort of little strat into little amp lead guitar sound. But we got to cross it over a little higher with the high pass. Because if we let too much bass in there, it's not going to sound like the little amp anymore. Well, if you don't have a good sounding guitar in the first place, it's not going to be magical even if you do heavy post-processing. You can't make magic out of post-processing. We're just trying to get the color to be about right. And then let's take a moment to see whether we can make it sound a little bit like your classic Jimi Hendrix into a Marshall stack kind of thing, because this is still a Strat. So in theory, we can get a Strat to sound big and Marshall stack-like in its own right. So that's going to be vintage stack, most likely. That's the closest I'm going to get with this particular plugin. And I'm just going to explore what we've got in here. Color boost is probably best off just all the way up. I'm padding it a lot with output level because I feel like I'm getting a lot of clipping here. And heavy range and heavy boost let me add a certain amount of low frequency stuff in here. So that's not huge amounts of gain, but that's not a million miles away from, I might have too much heavy boost on. That's not a million miles away from a Strat into a bigger amp, like a Marshall Plexi kind of thing. Now, if you were to plug in a humbucker guitar, you get something else. Namely, we stop this and then switch over to the heavier guitar. It's easier to get gain out of dirt with this pickup. Even on dirt, because the higher impedance pickup is just projecting a lot stronger. None of this is really giving you the texture of a real speaker, but this is me trying to fill in some of these gaps. And at that point, we start trying to find out whether we can get into our heavy metal style sounds. Again, this is vintage stack again. Now, I don't know if this is necessarily doing the job of getting there, but we're definitely getting a lot more gain out of edge. So the question becomes, how about a JCM like 800 style tone? High power stack is going to be a different speaker model, and that's a little more gritty there. We're doing all the boost we can get. How about one of the things I had in this one, Fizz Disrupt, is basically, I think it was a slew kind of thing, and that might get it sounding more high volume. Or not. So let's see what we can do with this. I don't even remember what this does. We'll look at the code in a moment. If we set it just right, we get a kind of effect off of it. If we leave heavy boost off, it's maybe a little light, so I think this is switching entirely over to the heavy boost tone, so we'll want to blend it. Well, we'll try to use that to get a more big amp, big speakers, moving a lot of air kind of thing. And then let's start high passing it. And again, we're looking for a sort of GCM kind of thing. I'm not sure this is it though. And remember, with this one, we're using Edge. Edge has a funny interaction with the way the high frequency cuts off. So you don't necessarily want to go into ear bleed cymbal style tones. You might want to be focusing on, rather than this fizzy, ratty kind of sound thing, a more locked in kind of sound. here we've got something which is not a million miles away from a heavy guitar sound, although it's all entirely in the box. And we're using all this gain, so I can't cut it back. Let's see if we can get a punchier sound from not just having it all the way up. Cut it off way higher. If we have no cabinet effect, we get this. So we can kind of try to find the right setting. Try to do this. And get that sonority that we get from a real amp as much as we can. I'm not sure if it really does it, but we're doing our best with it. And then lastly, let's go for a sort of dual recto thing. And our cab type becomes boutique stack. Bass, much more gain. Yeah, this is giving me a lot more trouble. Pass off a little higher. Yeah, I feel like this is not working nearly as well. Let's see what we get by using only a certain amount of it. Chords. Okay, so it feels like we need to moderate color boost on this one. Just a second. Okay, that's interesting. We have a separate thing going on here. So that's a very different balance in there. And here we are again with the dumb soloing, but that's using Boutique Stack apparently is a lot happier without nearly as much gain to it. Let's go back to the chords at the top again. I just want only those chords. The soloing is driving me up the wall. Yeah, I missed out not doing any chugging, man. There's no chords here. Well, heck. We'll save this. And if I'm so concerned about not having the chugging, let's go and do some. Because this was all just off of a guitar DI. In fact, we'll do a couple of different ones. We'll do a real Les Paul with an old humbucker pickup, and then we'll do that DiMarzio. And it's all going to be not very good because it's all going to be into the line input. And going into the line input will not give you an appropriate sound. But, hey, we've got a line input. And so and I think if I now do this, not even tuned or nothing, no matter. And then quickly over to an alternate guitar for that purpose. If I had your Apogee 1, I'd probably be able to do this more effectively, or at least I'd be getting more out of it. I am concerned that there's only a limited amount I can get out of this, but, you know. If you heard that recording that I did, where I kind of tried to do a side trance with guitar over it, that shows you that Les Paul again in a way that's a lot more serious. Oh, and those were very dead strings too, but let's see what we get. So one interesting thing about this is some of your guitar sounds also have to do with the action. That's a very low action. All the strings are buzzing. Oh no, I'm playing guitar terribly, but I'm demonstrating the point. So sometimes your sound has as much to do with the fact that the strings are buzzing. You will find that's also the case even for things like bass sounds. Like some of Chris Squire's best bass sounds on Yes recordings were his Rickenbacker, but he's got very low action on the strings, and he's also playing real hard with the pick. And so some of the energy in that bass tone is the bass clipping like crazy and the string buzzing like crazy. Very much the case with guitar sounds. You'll have a completely different guitar sound depending upon whether you've got it with a high action and not clipping versus if you've got a low action and everything is buzzing like mad. And I'll quickly resave that and then back into our effect stacks. Here we are again. So here's our Les Paul. This is our DiMarzio. More gain. So with this we can kind of start getting our high pass is doing a lot here. Again, here's our DiMarzio. So this leaves a lot to be desired compared to a real amp. Notice what I'm doing? I was fooling with the color boost, and it does the thing of canceling what the input signal is. And it started giving me more bass, so I started rolling off bass on the high pass on the amp. And that balanced it into where I was starting to get a chug. That starts to sound a little bit like a real heavy guitar. Oh, if you want a Pantera, you need this. For Pantera, you want as bright as possible. And of course we have a lot of hiss here too. Here we have the real Les Paul. Yeah, these are some interesting things to play with, certainly. We're kind of in more of an Iron Maiden-y zone, so high power stack. We could go in a sort of ZZ Top zone using Edge by not having maybe quite as much gain here. Got a little more sonority going on. You know, you could use a tone like this. I don't think it's as good as a real amp, but if you can't do a real amp, this does at least have some of the loudness that you want out of an amp. It's a pretty dominant tone. It's really demanding attention. And then for less sheerly brutal, Dirt. And that is definitely not the high gain stuff. It's actually very low gain, but it has a certain quality to it. See, this is a tone that you wouldn't necessarily go for, like, oh, man, that sounds amazing, but if you put it in a track, like, you can turn that up quite a bit, and it has a lot of impact. You're getting a sense of the strings, you're getting a sense of the notes that are happening. But it's not just all full of high gain and everything. This is the kind of sound that you do if you were going for a sort of old Rolling Stonesy thing. There's one with a little more low frequency boost on there. And it still has the sonority and projection that you want out of it. You can voice it this way and that. Go away, spammer. Nobody needs you. And now let's see if we put the high gain. So the DiMarzio pickup. It drives every amp a little harder. If you let more bass through using the high pass, the Stradigan. So yeah, what I would say, these, yes, Cabs is one of the older Khaki plugins, and it is in the process of getting ported. That's what I've been doing pretty much this whole time, is I just recorded some guitar straight into the laptop, not even using proper impedance matching, just so that I could have something to play with and run into stuff like Dirt and Edge, because Dirt and Edge are distortion plugins that are designed that you could use them as guitar amp type things. They're nothing specific, but you kind of dial them in the direction where you might have it doing something. Oh, let's do both. So if you're doing this kind of thing, and you're using these really high gains and stacking them up, you have your initial thing doing the your initial thing does the high passing, and then your second stage, not as much high passing. I'm doing that in the actual real guitar amp too. show you. This is dirt into edge, into cabs. And we'll modulate it with dirt. All bass. Less bass. Highs. Less highs. The amount of total gain on this is just making all the hiss blow up. Let's see what we get with stacking up dirt. There's one. There's another. Oh, we're doing the VST on top of the... There we go. I think it would actually be... I'm going to say digital black is your friend. It's designed to do this. Marcio. And there are limits. So interestingly, even for gating it, edge into dirt, or vice versa, still gives you some noise. Yeah, there's the trouble if you have like bad impedance matching and a noisy input like a line in on an old MacBook, then you don't necessarily get that much benefit out of having a gate in there. So you want to be working on the noise from the source, honestly. And using higher gain pickups like the DiMarzio does help you with that. But yeah, for now, let's shut that down. And I believe we are going to be looking into bringing out cabs. It might not be right away because, as you can see, I've got a bunch of stuff coming up. But I'm going to call that fun enough that it's worth including. And I don't believe it's anywhere near as good as a real guitar. But why not have it, you know? And although I kind of forgot what you can do with it, I felt like there's enough weird zones in there to get interesting tones where I would actually reach for this and see what I could get out of it if I had no other choice and didn't have a real amp or I didn't have a real speaker or microphones that I would be able to use. You can kind of sort of get in the zone. I would be just as happy trying to do that with analog gear. Like having some of these distortions, rather than be purely in the box, run through a stomp box into the capture and then put your cabinet impulse or whatever on that. But, you know, these are, and of course, if you use real cabinet impulses, you will have a longer sustain. What I've got in cabs is so very brief that it doesn't have, like, if you thump the cab and the cab kind of goes rumble, cabs will not give you that. It's just contained entirely in the first microseconds of the speaker impulse. But it turns out that I can get some interesting effects out of that. So we'll call that worth exploring for a future day. And yeah, if you were doing the guitar sound, Foco, you might very well throw in a why not or who knows what to see what you can make happen. Because those other, you know, those filter plugins with all the gain, you could definitely see what you could get guitar-wise out of those. There's no reason you can't. On that note, I'll talk to you folks later, because this is as far as I go with the coding stream today. I will be picking up again tomorrow with some kind of music jam. I'm not entirely sure what. I just know it's not going to be Psytrance again, because I did not like how that worked. And I believe I have a setup where I should be able to bring the real electric guitar into things a little more. All I have to do is run it into channel 1, which I'm currently using for a microphone, and I can have my other stuff and the electric piano and electric lead guitar all kind of at the same time. Whether I'll be trying to play all of those things at the same time is another story, but stranger things have happened. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.